Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the third webinar in our series for cancer patients. Cheryl is here as always, a melanoma survivor and our chief patient advocate at 1104 Health. And she'll be doing a Q&A style session with T.J. Sharpe and Trena Brown. Both of them are also melanoma survivors, but have very different treatment journeys and experiences from each other and from Cheryl. So we're here to learn from them. To post questions throughout, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom. Those messages will be private to me, and I can, pose them live here, or I'll follow up with you one-on-one. And this webinar is presented by 1104 Health, as you can see here. And we're on a mission to give everyone the best chance of success and survival. And one of the ways that we're doing that is making clinical trials part of the treatment discussion. So I'll hand it over to Cheryl.
Great. Hey, thanks for joining us again. We really appreciate you spending your afternoon, taking 30 minutes out of your day with us. Today, we are with Trena and T.J., who are melanoma survivors. They have great stories. I think it really brings to light, no matter at what process, why you need to advocate for yourself during your cancer journey or your melanoma journey. And above all that, when you're advocating for yourself and you're getting into treatment, there's a lot that's going on that's going to make you sick, and how do you get through that? And you have to build resilience, and it's resilience not only in how you can make yourself feel to move forward, but also about your mental resilience, being able to take the information that's given to you from your doctors and figure out if you need to look one step further. Sometimes your doctor isn't going to have all the answers, and that's when you go for a second opinion. And also through your process is becoming knowledgeable in research. A lot of people just go in and they get their appointments and they turn it over to their doctors. And as you go through your journey, you realize that research and clinical trials and understanding exactly what your treatment options are out there are also another key to your survival. I think we're going to go right over to kind of the Q&A with Trena and T.J., who both have completely different stories, and are going to be able to kind of shed a light on probably a lot of you can identify with these different types of journeys, and going through their experiences and what resources they utilized and when. So let's start with Trena. I hear a little bit about your story and how you came through your melanoma diagnosis.
Sure. My journey with melanoma started in the late 80s when I noticed that my big right toenail was turning a little bit brown. So I'm thinking that it's fungus, and I went to a dermatologist to have the fungus just removed. I wanted it gone. He told me, no, it was not in my toenail. It was not a fungus. It was the skin underneath of my toenail. And he additionally told me that as I got older, it would probably turn brown and very possibly would turn black, but not to worry about it. So that's exactly what happened. As I grew older, it turned brown. It looked like my toenail was brown, and then it turned black. And most importantly, I didn't worry about it. So years went by. Finally, I ended up getting, some biopsies and some better advice. And I ended up having a total amputation of my big right toe. 2 years later, I found out that through the observation of my trainer at the gym, that my breathing was heavier than normal, and she kept advising me to see a doctor about that. And finally, 3 months later, I saw a doctor about it because ignorance is bliss. And I found out that I had metastatic melanoma to my lungs. So I entered a treatment, 2-year treatment of immunotherapy every other week. And thankfully, at the end of it, there's no evidence of disease. Today, there is no evidence of disease. And I spend a lot of time trying to educate people of color that we can get melanoma as well as Caucasians. That was shocking to me as well, that melanoma, which can be terribly fatal quickly, can happen to people of color, and that our mortality rate is much higher because we're uneducated and we don't really pay attention to it. It's not something that's in common knowledge. So I'm happy to be an advocate for melanoma, advocate for getting second opinions, clinical trials, research. And I'm very happy to be here today and to share my experience with you guys.
Thank you, Trena. I appreciate that. TJ, let's get a little summary on your story and journey with melanoma.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Cheryl, and great to follow up listening to Trena's story. My journey was a little different. I was diagnosed at 25 with a stage 1B melanoma, and it sort of, we did a typical treatment, got it removed from my clavicle up here, and it sat there. Nothing happened to it. Nothing happened to it. Nothing happened, and I didn't think there was anything to worry about. I was very safe. I'm wearing hats and sunscreen and long sleeve shirts. And 12 years later, it came back as stage 4 melanoma. The same melanoma was still in my body and it had come back. I knew that there was a chance for recurrence. I had wrongly assumed that was going to come from external, from the sun. And in my case, it actually had been in my body, lying dormant for over a decade. My journey there differs a little bit from Trena's in that I had some background in melanoma when I was first re-diagnosed, so I had an idea of what I was up against. I was fortunate that I had earlier in my career worked in the pharmaceutical industry doing technical stuff, but understood things like clinical trials, what they meant, how they were actioned, and how they could be part of a patient's care journey. And I was fortunate that I had people that were willing to help me navigate through this. So when I was re-diagnosed, I was admitted to the hospital, spent 16 days there, pulled out an 8-centimeter tumor, had other tumors sort of surrounding the whole mesentery area here, and was lucky that I had a few people that knew enough about science and clinical research that they could ask the right questions and were able to do their research offline, so that when I get out of the hospital, I kind of had an idea of what my treatment could be. Also, fortunately, that when I got out of the hospital, immunotherapy had just started becoming part of the mainstream of treatment, and I was very early into it. So the opportunities there to be on early stage clinical trials for what are now approved drugs for melanoma presented itself for me. And I was able to get on not one, but 2 different clinical trials, and eventually got a full no evidence of disease after about 4.5 years on a PD-1 inhibitor. So my journey has been one of being able to find the right treatment for me, but also utilizing the resources that were available, that weren't available to everybody else, that was able to get me to the right place. In my case, it was Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida, and to the right trial, or one of the trials, and then into the second one closer to home here in Fort Lauderdale.
Great, thank you for that. And again, you both had to go through different processes, and with, I know TJ, you went ahead and enrolled in a few clinical trials, so you really had to kind of research and be proactive in that area. Did you utilize any special networks to figure that out, or how did you figure out where to go for a clinical trial?
I guess they're special to me since they helped me get to where I am today. there was a lot of time and energy spent, like I said, by both myself and family and friends, or a few people that really understood this well. We utilized a few different things. We utilized, obviously, as probably everyone who's listening to this has done, we used Google, and that was the first step, which is a double-edged sword because there is a lot of information out there, both good and bad. One of my best resources was navigating to a couple of the melanoma foundations, the nonprofits or the patient advocacy groups that work with melanoma. They were an excellent source of information and for guidance as well. A number of them have programs for patients and caregivers that will allow you to contact somebody who can walk you through these initial steps of diagnosis, treatment evaluation, how to get a second opinion, looking at potential clinical research that might be appropriate for you. And I utilize that as well for actually a couple of different melanoma resources. So you can go search out melanoma patient advocacy groups. There are a couple of great ones. I don't want to endorse one over the other, but
Right.
you'll
They're all
see
good. You love them all.
they're all very good. And the other thing I really had was I had a champion in my corner, for lack of a better word, a really good friend of mine who was able to he was a college friend, and his nickname was Ninja in college. It's a long story for another day, but what I tell everybody is that I had a ninja in my corner, looking and would be able to kind of cut through some of the stuff, and really did a great job in helping me understand. And I came out of the hospital, so I was weak. I had lost 30 pounds, and I really it's a tiring thing to try to understand cancer when you really don't have a background in it. So for those of you out there who are listening, and find that ninja, that's someone that can help you navigate through this, who might understand this a little bit and can be a complementary voice, a set of ears for you. You can bounce things off of, and they can give you good recommendations or good thoughts without forcing you into a choice or telling you that you should do this or you should do that. It's been having him was a blessing.
No, that's a great point. And I had my husband who was a ninja concierge, and it makes a huge, huge difference. Trina, how did your friends?
I was going to say, TJ, you did a lot of research and you had a lot of medical knowledge. I was living in a bubble. I had no knowledge, no nothing. All I knew was I had a biopsy that I had to insist upon from a dermatologist who didn't seem to want to do it. And then I got a letter in the mail saying precancerous, you need to see a plastic surgeon. I had just moved. I moved 9 times in my life. This is the last one, but thank goodness I ended up where I am with a good hospital. And a plastic surgeon, there was one person I knew who used a plastic surgeon. So I called her and she gave me the name of her doctor. He wasn't seeing anyone else. And I called her back. I said, what do I do? What do I do? I need to see a plastic surgeon. And she said, call the head of the department at Hopkins. And that's what I did. And miraculously, when I mentioned melanoma, I got right through very quickly, got seen right away. So I was very fortunate with that. And it was the it was the plastic surgery department, excuse me, that put me in touch with the oncology people, and it went from there. But I had no clue at all. I was lost. Since that time, I totally agree with you, TJ, that there are lots of support mechanisms in terms of nonprofit organizations doing research, as well as I think that the Facebook pages are very helpful. There are several Facebook pages for different types of melanoma. Mine is acral, but some of them are very specific, and some of them address issues before surgery or treatment, and some of them after, because I'm sure everyone else had side effects, and you don't know what's going on with that either. Right. So it was different.
Yeah, navigating the side effects, I think, is one of the hardest things that you have to do through this whole process, and that's where a network really does help, because when all these strange things start happening to your body, you want to believe that you're not alone, and it's very comforting to find out that you're not. And I think TJ, you kind of were the educated, ask questions, the definition of, what we try to coach patients to do. Trena, if you were to talk to yourself, early diagnosis Trena with, or what kind of advice would you give yourself?
Wake up. um, I just had no clue, at the time. Now, of course, now looking back on it, I would have asked more questions at the time my toe was amputated. All they told me was my toe's gone and there's no cancer seen in my lymph nodes. So to me, I'm good. It's not coming back. No one said you have a very high probability of it returning, and you really need to watch this. So, it was shocking, but just, the knowledge of that, I couldn't have stopped it from coming, but perhaps I've been, better prepared. And then when it metastasized, I didn't ask a lot of questions, but maybe that's my way of coping with with the adversity of the bad health. But now I would definitely ask more questions. I would have gotten a second opinion on the toe when it happened. I probably would have gotten a second opinion on the particular oncologist that I use, even though it turns out that I was very happy with that person. But I just would have asked more questions and gotten second opinions.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And on TJ, since you went through that process and went on the clinical trials, what was your biggest hurdle in doing the navigation for yourself?
The biggest hurdle for me became well, there was two big hurdles. I cleared one very well, and I cleared one barely. It's kind of like one of those high jumps you're seeing in the Olympics these days. The first one was access, and I was fortunate, unlike Trena, to already have some knowledge and access to understand where to go. I think that I was fortunate that between family and work flexibility, I could do second opinions at multiple cancer centers. So I was able to do a couple in Florida within a few hours drive, and recognize that that's not something that many or everyone can do. I always encourage anyone to get a second opinion. That maybe that half a day off of work or away, maybe the difference between the right treatment and not, or the right result outcome and not. The other one that I had a harder time navigating was finding that right treatment. And my experience has been with clinical trials for both of my treatments, so it's a little more specific to that. But I think you could broadly generalize it as in finding the right treatment for the right person at the right time. And for me, that meant that I wanted to do an immunotherapy because it was what was next. I didn't want to wait for it to get approved because I might not have that time. I mean, I had that 2-year sort of death sentence hanging over me, and I didn't want to wait around. And that became a more arduous journey. It required having to call a pharmaceutical company to get them to sign a contract to start the clinical research. It involved understanding how the research worked and having to go to a place that was 4 hours from my home. And we because my first treatment was very intense and was a T-cell therapy that involved me being in the hospital for multiple stays. We actually were able to relocate over there for part of the trial for a few months. Again, resources that not everybody has, but we found a way to make it work. And that clearing that second hurdle, very much like Trena alluded to earlier, it was due to continuing to advocate for yourself and recognizing when something you don't know is an obstacle to overcome and not to avoid. I think, and Trena, you can jump in here too if you want. I know talking to other melanoma patients, I've seen it too often where something is hard to understand or is not clear, and patients just avoid it because it's difficult and it's scary. And I did part of it too.
Yeah, TJ, I think that part of our reaction is to Google something And, now we know that Dr. Google is not the doctor you need to be going to. Or if you're going to Google, you need to be Googling support and advice or resources instead of diagnosis and prognosis,
Right.
because it can really, throw you into the wrong type of category. I think, what you said at the beginning, or maybe it was Cheryl, about mental health is so important, during this time, but also realizing that, there are resources and, your diagnosis does not have to become your identity.
Right. And the common thread that I'm listening to is and you all out there, I'm sure this puts an exclamation point that your doctor is not always going to advocate for you. We love our doctors dearly, but if you look at both of these stories through their navigation, it wasn't their doctor that navigated them either to that clinical trial or to that next step. A lot of times they just drop you like a hot potato and you're left there to fend on your own. So it's not unusual. And that's one reason that 1104 Health is working so hard to establish networks between oncologists and clinical research centers to make sure that people can start to get handed off properly. And that with both of you, it's just kind of like you were both at some point in no man's land, right?
I'm sorry, Cheryl, you said we were both at one point.
At one point, you both were in no man's land. There was like nobody was really navigating or supporting you on the medical side.
That is absolutely true. And I also found that, well, two things. I was very fortunate that someone I used to work with, who I had shared my story, knew someone at one of the nonprofits that is a big research and support, nonprofit. And she put me in touch with their chief scientific officer. And that's when I learned so much more about what was not told to me in the doctor's office. But one of the things I realized too is that when I started showing improvement with the immunotherapy, my doctor reacted to me in such a different way. It was so much warmer and embracing than before. And, perhaps that's because, they don't know what to say to you. They don't know which way the treatment is going to go because, I happen to have an excellent, recovery, but it doesn't happen to, everyone. And I'm sure they have to say goodbye to, a number of people. But yeah, you definitely, until I started advocating for myself and really getting involved with more knowledge, I knew nothing. And I didn't know what to ask because you don't know what you don't know. I'm not a
Right.
medical person, so you don't know what you don't know. But truly, they say that everyone has two lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. Is that statement is so true because everything changes after they say you have cancer.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And is there anybody out there that has any questions for TJ or Trena right now and what you're going through? And
We did have one question posed that I answered in the chat about, do record reviews by health systems count as a second opinion in the event that you're too sick to be able to travel? And we can definitely follow up one-on-one with this specific person to help you with your case. But if you have additional perspective to what I wrote on that, you can answer.
I think one of the things I've worked and go ahead, Cheryl.
Oh no, go ahead, TJ.
I've worked in the clinical research industry now as an advocate, including for a company that does what are commonly called decentralized trials, where you have bits and pieces of the trials or the entire trial done outside of a hospital. It doesn't work as well in the cancer space, especially in late stage cancer, because you need that on-site treatment. So what I would encourage anyone out there to do, if you can't get to a visit, if you're in Fort Lauderdale like me, but you want to go up to Hopkins, is that right, Trina? You're at Hopkins?
Yes.
If I want to get to
Yeah.
Hopkins, there are options to do consults. If you feel like there's somebody that you want to speak to, you'll just have to recognize that eventually you're going to need to get to the treatment center where you're trying to get an opinion from. So I would say my experience has been that you are able to start the process and see if there's a match there, especially if there's a place that has a treatment or a trial that your current location doesn't have. And this probably goes from a smaller cancer center to a big research institution. But eventually you're going to have to get there.
Yeah, no, that's good advice, especially if you're in a small area, a small center, local oncologist, and your treatment is not going well. I think it's even more important. Is there any other?
I have to say too, for the people that were like me and don't have a clue, but they're thrust into this new normal. One of the things that was very helpful to me was to continue to try to do, to the extent that I could, continue to try to do the same things that I was doing before my diagnosis, which ended up being, going to the gym, things that I was eating. I didn't change my diet, very much. And, just keeping touch with friends. But I will say that, one of the things that I had to do was to shed all negativity from my life. And, unfortunately, that included a couple of friends, but sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And, I needed to keep my spirits up, and they weren't helping. So I made new friends. I have new friends at the hospital now. But I would say don't worry about it. Just going about your business and, be you, continue to be you, and continue to do the things that, you can do.
I do have one additional question as well that was submitted when people were registering, and that's about, we seem to always be in a now or never situation with a surgery or a need for treatment, and wonder what is the right time and how do you go about getting these second opinions when time is of the essence?
I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly don't have an answer for that. It's very, just getting an appointment at a regular dermatologist's office is sometimes, 6 months. So I think when I called Hopkins, about my toe initially, I was rather excited on the phone, and I told them that it was melanoma and that I needed to be seen right away. It was mitotic, so it was replicating itself quickly. So I was very, lucky with that. But thinking back on it, if I wanted to get another opinion, I don't know what to do other than get in queue and ask questions and, ask your primary care physician if they have any pull with, other people.
Can I add on to that? Because there's two thoughts. It's you don't have to rush and don't wait. is the conundrum you're going to be in.
Right.
And what I mean by that is you don't need to rush into your first treatment that your first physician tells you we got to start. Most of the people listening to this, even if you are a late stage cancer patient, you have enough time to be evaluated by at least more than one medical professional and make an educated decision. That is, I've had people come up to me and say, I just got diagnosed on Thursday. They want to start chemo on Monday. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What stage are you? Are there mutation? What is? Oh, we don't know, but he says we need to start. And that's.
No, I agree. It's not how fast you get treated; it's how you get treated. And that's a great point, TJ.
I would like to also chime in. I would like to chime in here too, because this is one of the driving forces of 1104 Health coming into existence. So the shortest answer for all of you here listening is reach out to us. We are here because we want to be that stopgap. We have connections with these health systems. We know the landscape, especially in melanoma. We will help you. So reach out to us and we'll help you navigate, and how we can get you in as quickly as possible to get those second opinions.
And honestly, we have a really great story. On our first webinar, we had a patient reach out to us that was having problems with her stage 4 diagnosis. She lived in Arizona and she traveled to where the specialist was that happened to be the doctor that we work with at Johns Hopkins for a particular type of drug. And we got her in there pretty fast. And it's a feel-good kind of story right now. It's giving her another option for treatment. So if that, and that's kind of why we're here at 1104 Health. I had the same situation as, in trying to connect and get appointments as Trena and TJ. It is a nightmare. The advocacy groups are awesome. They're there to give you information, but they aren't really there to help you get your appointments and expedite your resources to different physicians. And that is key at 1104 Health. We have those connections to help expedite that process.
And I think Shannon and Cheryl, one of the things that you guys do well is that process of it. That was the other part of the, you don't want to rush, but you also don't want to wait and just be complacent. And 1104 can really help a patient or a caregiver of a patient get to the right place and get the process moving.
So people don't have to live through TJ or Trena's hell. Hopefully we can help a bit, alleviate some of that, the stress and trying to make the connections on what to do next, and how to take a breath, right?
Awesome. So I know we're at time. We'll take any final thoughts, and for those that are participating, this recording will go out. So if you have to jump, you'll get the recording shared with you. But TJ and Trena, any final thoughts on this topic to help patients going through this?
Again, I think if I were to, knowing what I know now, I think one of the first things I would do would be to get involved with a support group, in addition, I was lucky enough to have my family here to help me, but get in touch with a group, because talking with people in a group gives you different perspectives, and they've had different solutions, to their issues, but you can take this all in and try to figure out what you want to do. If you want to travel somewhere else, if you can, if you're able to do that, or if you want to just try to get a second opinion in the city that you're in, or go do a Zoom with Cheryl and Shannon. There are things that you can do if you know about them, but I didn't know about them. So I think that would be the advice I would give for someone who's just starting out with, in the journey, is to get involved with some groups right away. And, if you Google, there are groups that do come up. So just don't pay attention to Dr. Google. But
yeah, stay away from Dr. Google. That's great advice. That's really great advice. What about you, TJ?
I guess I'll build right on that thought, because I think we touched on a lot of these things already. Get in the driver's seat of your care, or at least in the co-pilot seat with your Ninja, and find that Trena mentioned it earlier. I think very good is that she let go of the negativity in her life, and I think part of that was the complementary part to my message of finding the right people who would help, and that's the find your tribe mentality. This is going to be a new journey. It's not going to be with the same people you've known and loved forever. You are now about to enter your cancer world, your cancer family, and you'll have some holdovers from both. You'll have some people that are going to be there supporting you, but you will find other support in the form of other patients or other caregivers, advocates like Trena and myself, people working like Shannon and Cheryl to make lives better. Like that's going to be now part of your life. To get you through this part. So embrace that there's a lot that those of us who want to help have to offer, and take what you need from us, and don't feel bad about it, because part of what I think the four of us want to do is continue to impact the lives of people who hear the same thing we heard one day. This is cancer. You have cancer, and make their journey maybe a little bit easier than mine was, and certainly a heck of a lot easier and better than Trena was, but also getting the outcomes that we've been fortunate enough to have.
Yeah, that is well said. Once you have cancer, once you've been given that diagnosis, you're never quite the same person. It's going to change you forever, and it will kind of evolve your life in different ways than you never thought it would affect you. But you will come out of it, and it will make you a different person for sure. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you, for sharing, as always. And thank you for everyone that joined. You'll hear from us with the recording.
Great. Thank you for your afternoon, sharing your time with us, and please reach out.